Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Z.S. Caraval from CK Research, and I'm joined today by a longtime friend and Cube analyst, Bob Laliberte. Hey, Bob, how you doing? The year's almost up here, huh?
Yeah, doing very well, Z.S. Yeah, it's amazing. They seem to keep going by much faster.
Yeah, well, hopefully not too much faster. We're like I said, we're at near the end of the year, and it's time for all us good prognosticators to look ahead. I think one of the more interesting companies to look at, though, and we're going to talk extensively about Cisco, just because it was a big year of change for Cisco. First of all, the company turned 40, and when people turn 40, they go through a midlife crisis. So we have to see if Cisco is going to do that or not. But it was a big year of change, right? They completed the acquisition of Splunk late last year, so you saw that come in. Cisco Live was busier than ever. I think one of the more notable changes, though, was at the executive level, they reorged and they named Jeetu Patel the first chief product officer in the company's history. At least that's what they said. I seem to remember Pankaj Patel might have been the chief product officer way, way back in the day before they had a lot of the products they have, but certainly in modern Cisco times, he's the first, which to me seems crazy that they didn't have that before.
Yeah,
And
it's a great point because I mean they've got so many different product lines that were operating in their own silos. So it's great to see that unification at the top to be able to look across all the product lines and be able to put together solutions that leverage all of them.
yeah, and the big thing for Cisco next year, and we're going to talk about what to look for, but is this concept of the Cisco platform. And I think one of the interesting aspects is like, what does that mean, right? Like, what does it mean? And G2 at Partner Summit used the analogy of Apple, where if you think of the Apple platform, right? I've got a MacBook, I've got an iPad, I got a watch, I got a phone, and all the stuff kind of works together, right? I can copy one, paste to the other. But what that does, though, is when a new phone is released, I don't go run out and compare the iPhone 16 to the new Galaxy, right? I just know I'm going to go with the iPhone. And so I think that's the mission. And I think in order to do that, though, you had to have a single product owner. And I think the timing is good, too, because, the fundamental thesis of my research has always been that share shifts happen when markets transition. And I think it's fair to say Cisco's missed some of these transitions in the past, mobile, cloud, things like that. And they've been a share donor in some areas. And so if Cisco is going to kind of revamp itself and start taking share back, they need to do things differently, and having things roll up, to one person actually makes some sense. Now, G2 has been really busy, since they named him that. He wrote a LinkedIn post talking about his commitment to Cisco and what his strategy is. And I know you had some thoughts on that. Did you want to go through those?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good and it was really telling. I think he published this back in August. So it was
Yeah.
right after he was announced. He came and set the bar for this is where Cisco is going. And so I thought the first part of his post was really telling because for the longest time, all of us analysts and customers and others have been saying you got to move faster. So his first initiative and his I think what the way he framed it was the product team's commitment to the front lines at Cisco was they would become the world's largest startup and start moving with speed and agility, try and become more disruptive, right? Deliver outcomes at the quality and scale that customers expect from Cisco. So I think that in and of itself is a huge initiative and a huge undertaking for Cisco to do, right? Become from one of the obviously the largest networking company in the world, and then transform into becoming the world's largest startup. There's going to be a lot to go there. And some of the other things he brought up, and feel free to jump in here, Zias, as well. But the second thing he said, we want to make sure we build products that people love
Yeah.
and they're talking about. So, right, he's got a lot of work to get around. So it's not just I'm buying it because I've always had it. It's I'm buying it because I really like this and I want to have it, like you said in the Apple analogy. The platform advantage was something he brought up as well. And obviously, Cisco does have a huge advantage if they can leverage their entire portfolio under a single platform. So bringing together collaboration, security, networking, observability, even app dev and things like that they're working on. So there's a lot of room for Cisco to be able to put together a really valuable platform. they obviously want to, another comment he said was getting value out of AI, right? I think that's universal right now. Everyone has an AI initiative, but they're struggling to get it deployed and to be able to derive some type of value and an ROI from it. So I think, they're looking at how do we have AI as an intrinsic part of all of their products and solutions, and help organizations accelerate their adoption of AI. And then the last piece he mentioned over the summer was they're going to be committed to their silicon and optics, right? So developing
Yeah.
that custom silicon to give customers advantage.
Yeah, the platform one's interesting. Actually, all those were interesting. The on the moving like a startup, the challenge there for Cisco is to do it at scale, right? Like startups move fast because they're small. There's not a lot of internal stuff to get in the way. You don't have to worry about other product groups. So we'll see if they can do that at scale. I think the platform one, when he described it as having products that'll be loosely coupled and tightly integrated, that's interesting as well. And the importance of that, Bob, I think Cisco got away from that, maybe a decade or so ago. But if you think of the competitive landscape back then, it was a lot weaker. The networking competitors, what, Nortel and 3Com.
Right.
In the voice over IP space, it was 3Com, ShoreTel. I mean, a bunch of legacy PBX vendors, even the security side. But you look at the competitors today, Zoom, Microsoft, Arista, VMware, HPE. I mean, it is a lot different. And so when you've got products, and everybody inside Cisco would tell you their products are best of breed, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but best of breed tends to ebb and flow based on product cycles.
Right.
You put an awful lot of strain on your sales force to be able to understand how, from a data center networking perspective, I compete with Arista, and how from a campus I compete with Juniper and Extreme, and then VoIP or Collab how I compete with Zoom and Teams. And so you have to have domain knowledge of all of these things. If you're selling the platform, now all of a sudden those individual competitive battles, don't matter. Security, Palo, Fortinet are very strong, and I think it certainly helps with adoption across the board. I think also, one of the other things he said at Partner Summit was that he's going to change the company. In fact, his quote, and I want to make sure I get this right, was Cisco will be a very different company a year from now and completely unrecognizable for the better in 2 years. And so change is coming. Now, to do this, right, this change, you need the right people in place. And, along with all the other stuff Jeetu's been doing, he announced the reorg, the 25,000 person product organization. I know you've got a slide. You're going to let's bring that up now and take a look at what the organization looks like. It's in 4 groups, right? So there's a security data center, internet and cloud infrastructure led by Tom Gillis, campus branch, IoT and collab led by Anurag Dhingra, Splunk, obviously Tom Casey, and AI software and platforms led by DJ Sampath. And you've got it up here. Any thoughts on this organizational structure?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I think it's great that they've integrated the security piece more tightly. Obviously, they've got the networking and collab, and I think what he's trying to do is bring that around to be focused on some of the core areas that they wanted to target, as he mentioned in the summer. So if you remember, they're going after enable AI-ready data centers, future-proof the workplaces, and digital resilience. And so some of these things line up nicely to that. So the campus branch and collaboration, IoT, right? That ties into a lot of the future-proofing the workplaces, the security data center, right? Getting into the AI-ready data centers combined with that AI software and platform team that they have. And then the Splunk team having that digital resilience, right? Obviously having that observability, being able to understand where your vulnerabilities are and ensure that you've got a highly available and resilient environment. So I think the way he's organized it is focused on the customer problems. The other interesting piece I found about the org that I found interesting, in addition to these 4 main groups, he also has a central teams group that
Yes.
focuses on things like the product marketing and evangelism, on pricing strategy and planning, business ops, and things like that. So there's some overarching, I guess, air cover that they have, each of these units will have from a central team, to be able to help accelerate the pace of business and how they get things done. Because like you said, that's really that becoming a startup and moving fast is really what people are going to judge them on, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and actually that central team should simplify the portfolio and the way customers buy it. And one of the commitments Chuck Robbins, their CEO, made was that Cisco was going to be easier to do business with and for the partners easier to partner with. And Rodney Clark already revamped the partner program, and we're seeing them always trying to simplify pricing. They brought ELAs in and things like that, but that central team should help with that. Now, I do think so. Jeetu has been in this role about 4 months, and we have seen some evidence of this strategy. Now, some of this was probably already in the works, but if you look, and this isn't an exhaustive list of all the accomplishments, I want to make that clear. There's a lot more to this, but he announced the strategy rollout of Partner Summit, which is back in November. They had the AI assistant integrated into Meraki, as well as security. They rolled out the Wi-Fi 7 AP. And what I liked about that one is it had integrated security and Thousand Eyes. So a lot of people think APs are commodities, but they loaded that up with Cisco tech, and now it's not a commodity, right? It does more than a regular AP. They rolled out the AI pods, which are a cross-product set of suite of products. The 51.2 terabyte switch; those were announced at Cisco Live APAC. He reorged the group, and there's a lot more to that. And what's interesting about that, Bob, is let's bring up your ETR data here. It actually, Cisco was trending downwards, and so explain how the ETR data works and what you're looking at here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a slide from the Enterprise Technology Research where they do a technology spending intention study. And they're always asking organizations, are you adding more? Are you subtracting more? Who are you currently using? Things like that. And so what you're looking at in this slide is on the X vertical, right? On the vertical, you're looking at a not net promoter, but a net adoption. So are you adopting this or adding to it versus minus how much you're subtracting or replacing? And then going across the horizontal, what you're seeing is the pervasion, how much of that company is being used in these organizations. And so the interesting thing, you see, I've plotted out Meraki and Cisco. And so what you can see is that over time, you've seen Cisco slipping in some of that pervasion and its usage, right? Obviously, it's market share. The interesting thing is since Jeetu's takeover in just this last quarter, we're seeing a little bounce back for Cisco. Now, all the data is not fully in yet for the January study, so I will make my disclaimers there, but it looks very positive for Cisco in this regard that they've halted a somewhat of a downward trend and they're starting to move in the other direction. I mean, organizations have always wanted Cisco to move faster. And what you're seeing, like all those announcements since Jeetu have taken over and so forth, what everyone's expecting, and right, the caveat here is they need to see that continue, right? We need to see that innovation and the pace of innovation continue to accelerate. And that ability, like you said, that whole platform approach, I usually refer to this as selling the book and delivering the chapters, right? If you're Cisco and you can go out and tell the story of that platform covering all the technologies and then be able to say, and here's where we'll start. We're going to start with chapter 3. We're going to start with chapter 5, but we'll be able to get you to the whole book by the time we're done. And I think that's the power of the platform. And if Jeetu and his team that he's now assembled can go out and really accelerate against that, it'll be interesting to track this and see where they go next quarter, right? To see what the April data looks like.
Yeah, and so off to a good start. We can call this the Jeetu effect if you want. But clearly they have had a lot of products, and what I do like about, and I mean, in reality, Cisco's a big company. They roll out products all the time, but there is a lot of evidence of cross-product integration, right? Which I think is the most notable thing. So if we look ahead to 2020-25, right? I don't know if he can put enough changes in place to move the stock price, if that's when you want to use as the ultimate litmus test of whether it's working or not. And sometimes I think, investor sentiment takes a long time to drag along. But as industry analysts, what are the kind of things you're going to be looking for to see if the strategy is working? And, I can, I'll certainly throw one out there. I do think the platform effect is, as they roll out these products, can they demonstrate that this new feature on WebEx works better because it's on a Cisco network? And they've had some of that already. Like last year, the codec that powers WebEx and the quality of video hadn't really changed in a long time. And they developed their own AI one that uses a lot of network analytics. So it runs over low bandwidth connections. And so we don't all live in places where the bandwidth is fantastic. In fact, much of rural America, it's not. And, that was a good example of how they took their network knowledge and applied it to WebEx to make that work better. I mentioned the AP as well, but that's one of the things I want to see is more cross-product features.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, and certainly everyone loves Thousand Eyes. And so seeing that continue to be integrated across the portfolio, I think now you've got Splunk, so you're going to be looking for that to be integrated. Now that you've got a business unit with security and data center, internet, and cloud, obviously you would expect to see tighter integration. I think even, and I think in that there's some of the mobility as well, right? So I think the SD-WAN and those pieces are actually part of that as well. So you'll see some of the SASE stuff come out and be more tightly integrated. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I had said earlier, I think it's going to be that pace of the innovation. I think you made a great point about the level of integration that's taking place, that loosely coupled but tightly integrated that Jeetu talked about. So those are the proof points that I think Cisco needs to be able to be loud about when they're coming out, right? So G2's put the stake in the ground and said, this is what we're going to do. Here's where we're going to get to. And so I think they just need to make sure that as they make advancements, as they do those technology integrations that deliver, much better outcomes for their customers, that they're making sure they're telling the market about it and making sure they're taking credit for the fact that they are now moving faster, that they are now integrating across product lines and driving that platform approach.
Yeah, and I think I think if my thesis is correct, that market share shifts happen or markets transition, AI is creating the biggest transition that we've seen in a long time. And here is where the strategy that's put in place is either going to work or not work, right? And because I think Cisco arguably has, or unarguably, if you want, really has as broad a portfolio as anybody from an infrastructure perspective. And so they have all the components to be, one of the leaders in AI infrastructure. They also have more infrastructure data than anybody when you combine security telemetry, network telemetry, Splunk, what they get from Thousand Eyes, once they get from WebEx devices, what they get from user information, things like that. And so they've got the infrastructure and they got the data. If they can create this platform effect, there's no reason why this AI transition can't be the thing that propels Cisco next year, into being, a share taker instead of a share donor like they've been.
Yeah, and you make a great point about, and AI has two components, as we often talk about, right? There's all that data is going to be hugely helpful in them driving up the efficacy of their AI ops, right? Platforms that they build out and are able to deploy across their infrastructure. And that's going to should help to accelerate the time to comfort and get people used to leveraging the AI and automated technologies and so forth. The other piece of that is the AI equation is the AI infrastructure, right? How can they help them build out those AI-ready data centers as more and more organizations want to look at? And just to throw a quick plug out to my boss, Dave Vellante, who did a blog post, is breaking analysis around, ChatGPT's biggest competitor, Sam Altman's biggest competitor is Jamie Dimon, because all these enterprises have way more. I think it was like half a petabyte that GTP4 was trained on. Jamie Dimon's got hundreds of petabytes, right? So as organizations move that AI training and inference infrastructure back on-prem to use their own data that they have, that's a huge opportunity right now for infrastructure companies like Cisco to help accelerate that transition.
Yeah, I think in some of the more notable places we're going to see this benefit too, obviously networking, but I think security is really a big needle mover opportunity for Cisco. In fact, I've said for a long time, it's the biggest needle moving opportunity Cisco has, because let's face it, in networking, they've already got so much share, Bob. They've lost some, but even if they regain some of the back, you're talking like single digit percentage points. Collab's a tough competitive environment. They can gain some share there, but security doesn't really have a de facto leader, right? Palo Alto's probably it today, but when you look at their relative size compared to the $80 billion security market, that's one if Cisco can even execute on reasonably well,
Right.
it's going to have a huge multiplicative effect. And I think, I liked Hypershield, and I got to know some. I know they have some more stuff coming, but that's the concept that I can take security enforcement and distribute it across the network. And so that's the coming together in network and security. And I was talking with Chris Conrad, who runs security for Worldwide Technology, and he was even saying that, from a partner perspective, Cisco's always had good products, but it was just this collection of loosely coupled products. It's like Duo and things like that. But now he said for the first time ever, he feels like Cisco has a real security strategy, and so the partners are excited, and that's certainly a good thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, they've got one of the best partner programs for technology when you look across. And, just going back to how you started this, they've been in business for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to point to other technology companies that have been in business for 40 years, right? It's kind of a one hand type of thing. So the fact that they've made it this far, the fact that they're still going strong is impressive. I think what's really going to be interesting, like I said, for 25 is a really pivotal year for them. Is Jeetu able to pull the team together, rally them around, create that startup-like environment, and really accelerate the pace of innovation and integration so that they can come out with that platform approach that drives real value to their enterprise customers?
Yeah, actually, you make a good point. At 40 years old, let's put this in perspective, okay? We talk about Cisco's problems, but they're a $50 billion company that runs north of 65% gross margin that generates billions of dollars of cash a quarter. So we should all have these problems, Bob.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You don't? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I do think, it's extremely well-run company, I think. But I do think, Chuck made a pretty big bet buying Splunk. I think a lot of people in the financial industry look at that as they pay 24 billion or whatever it was, or 28 billion to get 4 on revenue, which in itself isn't a bad financial transaction given Splunk's margins. But clearly, I think there's a 1 + 1 = 3 here, and that's going to be using that Splunk telemetry data across the board. So, happy birthday, Cisco. I guess you turned
Yeah, happy
40.
40th. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think 2025 will be a seminal year in the history of Cisco, and I think it's going to prove whether they can take a step function in growth and be whatever the 2.0 version of Cisco is going to be.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to following them in 25. I'm looking forward to what G2 and his now newly aligned team are able to produce. And we'll wish them the best. Happy 40th. And let's see where 2025 takes them.
Yep, Cisco, the product company, right? It's been said that they went away from that, but I think one thing I know about G2 is he is dialed in on the stuff, and so is the team of people that report to him. So I guess with that, happy holidays, Bob, and I guess we'll have our magnifying glass on Cisco in 25.
Sounds good. Happy holidays, Zias. Thanks for having me.
All right. So on behalf of Bob Laliberte from the Cube Research, I'm Zias Caravallo from ZK Research, saying thanks for watching. Give us a like and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast. Thanks, Bob.